Hey there, guys. All right, today we are back with some more of the Great War. We are on to week 157. 3 years of World War One. Now, before we dive in, make sure you go and check out the links in the description box below. I would love if you join the Discord and follow me over at Twitch. Got nothing to add here at the end. Let's go ahead and dive right in.
The war that would be over by Christmas. The war that all of Europe marched off to.
Hey, the war will be over by Christmas. By Christmas of 1918. You know,
Joyously. The war that now has a death toll in the millions, casualties in the tens of millions, has brought in nations from all over the world, has seen the use of flamethrowers, mustard gas, bombing of civilians, the advent of the tank, indeed, the advent of total war. That war is now 3 years old. I'm Indy Nidell. Welcome to the Great War. Last week, the Russian Kerensky offensive faced serious trouble as the Germans and Austrians counterattacked. The artillery barrage heralding the arrival of Britain's Western Front offensive was in high gear, and the German Reichstag proposed to work for peace, though the army and the Chancellor said that ain't gonna happen. The Kaiser, for the first time since before the turn of the century, now met representatives of all German political parties except for the independent socialists. In a sort of a stunning turnabout from his recent thoughts about Belgian independence after the war, he made a speech arguing for a second Punic War against Britain, during which all of Europe, under Germany's leadership, would destroy British world domination. The political
God damn it, Kaiser Wilhelm. God damn it.
reps were, needless to say, completely shocked. The Kaiser obviously had no interest at all in last week's peace resolution. In the British House of Commons, Ramsay McDonald did try to get support for the Reichstag peace resolution, but was defeated 148 to 19. After
Damn.
that, he bitterly wrote to U.S. President Woodrow Wilson that American
Fuck Woodrow
neutrality
Wilson.
would have been better for peace. And on a related note, at the end of the week came a meeting of Bolshevik sympathizers in London who called themselves the London Soviet, and they wanted an immediate end to the war. The British government, though, arranged for the Daily Express to reveal the location of the meeting and distributed leaflets saying it was pro-German. 8,000 people, including soldiers in uniform, turned up and broke up the meeting. In the field, Britain was just about to launch a major new offensive in Flanders, but it would be tricky. The positions to be attacked were both geographically and militarily some of the best defended on the Western Front. The Germans looked down from the higher ground of Passchendaele and Gelluvelt over a plain from which 3 years of constant shelling had removed all vegetation. In addition to the complete absence of any concealment, the drainage system had been destroyed, so that rain, frequent in August, turned the ground into a swamp. The German Flanders position was 9 layers deep, from listening posts to trenches, to machine gun posts, and all the way back to the heavy artillery and reserves. The men had also been trained in the new flexible defense system the Germans had developed and then used successfully against the British and French 3 months ago at Arras and the Aisne. On their main line of defense, that to be attacked by the British Fifth Army, were 1,556 field guns and heavy guns on a front of just over 11 kilometers. The British, though, had 2,299 guns,
Damn.
one for every 5 meters, which
Damn.
was 10 times the density they had used at the Battle of the Somme last summer. On July 26th, 700 British and French aircraft took to the sky and cleared it of Germans, giving the British air superiority to a depth of 8 kilometers, which was where the German observation balloon line began. You got to realize that visibility from, say, a captured balloon in clear weather was up to 100 kilometers. And since the balloon had a telephone cable attached to its tether, you could easily and quickly correct your artillery positions. The preliminary artillery barrage had already begun last week and would total some 4 million shells, 4 times the number used at the Somme.
Why didn't the Entente use the balloons, the blimps, like the Germans are with the, the spotting and things like that? We haven't heard mention that they use it, so I'd like to assume that they perhaps used it, but, there's never been any mention of it, so I'm kind of doubtful that they did use such a thing.
That barrage continued all week as the British made ready to attack. And her allies made brand new attacks already this week. The Battle of Maharashti began July 22nd. This was a Romanian and Russian joint attempt to, ideally, encircle and destroy the German Ninth Army and take back Romanian territory lost last fall. Back in May, plans were made for the Romanian 1st and 2nd Armies for this new campaign, and it came off now against German and Austro-Hungarian defenders. The Romanian artillery began to pound and destroy enemy positions July 22nd and did an excellent job, totally disorganizing the defensive front lines and opening gaps in the barbed wire. The next day, the Romanian infantry went over the top. After the 1916 campaign, they had been reorganized and further trained, and they were battle-hardened troops fighting on their home territory, and it showed. For the rest of the week, they pushed the enemy back a dozen kilometers on a front over 30 kilometers wide and took hundreds of prisoners and dozens of artillery pieces, and the morale of the Romanians was riding high. But Russian morale was collapsing as the Germans and Austrians were making big advances of their own. At the end of last week, they had begun their counterattack, and now the Russians, low on supplies, began to flee in panic. General Alexei Brusilov ordered the retreat, but it was turning into a rout. All through the week, the Russian retreat continued. By the 23rd, it was undisciplined on a front of over 200 kilometers. The next day, Stanislav and Halych fell, and on the 26th, Tarnopol fell. This seemed like the reverse of last summer, when the Russians rolled over the Central Powers, and might spell disaster for Russia. Tens of thousands of Russian soldiers simply threw down their rifles and fled from the war zone. Hundreds of officers were murdered. 2 Allied armored car units, one British and one Belgian, were serving on the Eastern Front. Their officers pleaded with the Russian deserters to return to the front line, but in vain. And here are a couple of notes to end the week. Polish leader Józef Pilsudski was arrested this week and imprisoned in Magdeburg after forbidding his soldiers to swear an oath of loyalty to the Central Powers. And Siam declared war on Germany and Austria-Hungary the 22nd.
Good job,
the week
Siam.
comes to an end. The Central
You're
Powers
doing your
routing the
part.
disorganized Russians, even as Romania is pushing back the Central Powers. Groups around Europe that want peace being easily suppressed by their governments, and the British finalizing plans for an offensive that will begin in just a few days. I mentioned 2 weeks ago that mustard gas made its debut. In the 6 weeks following that macabre milestone, 19,000 British soldiers were incapacitated by the gas, many of them being blinded. When the war broke out, so many millions upon millions of people had thought of the honor and glory the fight would bring, this noble war. Well, Wilford Owen was at Craig Lockhart War Hospital at this time in Britain, and he wrote one of the most powerful poems to come out of the war.
Bent double, like old beggars under sex. Knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and toward our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep, many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshot, all went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of gas shells dropping softly behind. Gas! Gas! Quick, boys! An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time, but someone still was yelling out and stumbling, and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Dim, through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea, I saw him drowning. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face, like a devil sick of sin. If you could hear, at every jolt, the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs,
Obscene as cancer,
bitter as the cud of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie, dulce et decorum est, pro patria mori.
The war is 3 years old, and there is no end in sight. If you'd like to see our bio special about another writer of the war, you can click here for our special about Eric Maria Remarque. Our Patreon supporter of the week is...
And that was 3 years of World War I, the Great War, week 157. A somber ending note here with I don't think anything else to be said. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.